First, we have anatomy, which is in charge of studying the organisms and their parts. Then there is biotechnology, which is the exploitation of biological processes, such as genetics. Then we have botany, which studies plants. And cell biology studies the structure and function of cells. The ecology is in charge of studying the relations between living things. The evolution studies the living things through history. The immunology is a medical and biological branch that is in charge of the immunity. The microbiology studies the microscopic organisms, and the molecular biology studies the structure and function of proteins and nucleic acids. The mycology studies the fungi. The parasitology studies the parasites. The photobiology studies the relation between light and organisms. The virology studies the viruses. And finally, the zoology is in charge of the classification of animals. Now, how did life was created? As we know, Earth has more than 3.7 billion years, but actually we don't know how life was started. Scientists have many theories about how this happened, and we're going to show you two of them. The first theory says that life was created by an electric spark. As we know, electric sparks can generate amino acids and sugar from an atmosphere loaded with water, methane, ammonia, and hydrogen. So a lightning bolt struck on Earth, and that's how life was created. The second theory says that life was created in deep sea vents due to the rich hydrogen molecules that exist there. Scientists say that rocks may have compressed these molecules, and that's how life was created. So here are the two main theories.
I'm Sarah, and I'm talking about the characteristics of the living beings. First, we have the organization. In living beings, the components are organization complexly. That means that nothing can exist or function in a correct way without a complex organization. The living beings have a 8 degrees of a complexity because they are composed by a million of molecules and like nucleoids, the lipids, the carbohydrates, glucose, and among others. One characteristic is the genetic code. It's a sequence of nitrogenous that can create words. It's like a language understood for all living beings and can be universal. The genetic code explains the relationship between the nucleotide triplets, the codon, and each amino acid. Characteristic is the response to stimuli, perception and response to stimuli that come from the external and internal environment. The response to stimuli, all of living beings respond to different stimuli, such as light, temperature, chemical substances, sound, and a lot of stuff. The characteristic is homeostasis. While everything in the universe tends to chaos, life strives to maintain its balance, even if it has to spend energy to achieve this. The homeostasis refers to the self-regulation phenomena that leads of the conservation of steadiness in the composition and properties of the internal environment and of an organism that allows it to have a free life. The is metabolism, obtaining and using energy. The living beings use energy to maintain homeostasis, and also they must take the components from the external environment, transform them, and use them for their benefits. Then we have the sixth characteristic, that is growth. Well, we have the difference between the prokaryotic cell and the eukaryotic cell. The prokaryotes are cells without a nucleus, so the genetic material is found in the cytoplasm and is called nucleoid. The prokaryotic cell have two types of reproduction, the asexual reproduction and the parasexual reproduction. The eukaryotic cell have two types of cells, the animal cell and the plant cell, and also have a nucleus.
My name is Veronica, and I'm going to talk about the history of the microscope as well as the cell and cell theory. History of the microscope. During the 1st century AD, glass had been invented, and the Romans were testing it. One of their samples was thick in the middle and thin on the edges. They discovered that if you held one of these lenses over an object, the object would look larger. These early lenses were called magnifiers or burning glasses. The early simple microscopes had one power, usually about 6 times to 10 times. In 1590, two Dutch spectacle makers, Zacharias Janssen and his father Hans, started experimenting with these lenses. They put several lenses in a tube and discovered that the object near the end of the tube appeared to be greatly enlarged. And so they had just invented the compound microscope. Galileo heard of their experiments and started experimenting on his own. He added a focusing device to his microscope and went on to explore the sky. Anthony Leeuwenhoek of Holland was able to make small ones with great curvatures. These rounded lenses produced greater magnification, and his microscopes were able to magnify up to 270 times. Anthony Leeuwenhoek was able to see bacteria, yeast, blood cells, and many tiny animals swimming about in a drop of water. He has since been called the father of microscopy. Little was done to improve the microscope until the middle of the 19th century, when great strides were made and quality instruments like today's microscope emerged. The cell and cell theory. The cell theory states that all organisms are composed of similar units of organization, called cells. The cell was first discovered and named by Robert Hooke in 1665. He remarked that it looked similar to cella or small rooms which monks inhabited, thus derived the name. What Hooke actually saw was the dead cell walls of plant cells. Hooke's description of these cells was published in Micrographia. The first man to witness a live cell under a microscope was Anton van Leeuwenhoek, who in 1674 described the algae Spirogyra. The modern cell theory. First, all known living things are made up of cells. Second, the cell is structural and functional unit of all living things. Third, all cells come from pre-existing cells by division. Fourth, cells contain hereditary information which is passed from cell to cell during cell division. Fifth, all cells are basically the same in chemical composition. And sixth, all energy flow, metabolism, and biochemistry of life occurs within cells. Cell biology research exploded in the 1950s. It became possible to maintain, grow, and manipulate cells outside of living organisms. The first continuous cell line to be so cultured was in 1951 by George Otto Gay, and co-workers derived from cervical cancer cells taken from Henrietta Lacks, who died from cancer in 1951.
Now, let's talk about the cellular transport. Everything that enters or leaves a cell has to pass through the cell membrane, which is an organelle that is present in all the cell types. This process is carried out by cellular transport. The cell needs the nutrients or molecules required to carry out its metabolic activities to enter the cytoplasm, and also that the waste or the products it generates, such as hormones, come out of it. Transport can be classified according to the amount of molecules that pass through the membrane. If they pass one by one, then transportation can be active or passive. In the active transportation, it spends energy and goes against gradients of concentration. The passive transportation does not waste energy and goes in favor of concentration gradient. It can be simple diffusion, facilitated, and ultrafiltration or dialysis. For now, we will only talk about the simple and facilitated diffusion. For the simple diffusion, the molecules cross the lipid barrier. Gases such as carbon dioxide and oxygen pass through it freely. However, other small polar molecules with no electrical charge, such as water, can pass through the membrane only in small portions. Large polar molecules with no electrical charge, such as the glucose, can pass through it, but only in minimal proportions. Ions have an electrical charge, so they can never pass through the membrane. In the facilitated diffusion, the passage of molecules depend on the presence of the integral membrane proteins that allow the passage. These proteins can form channels or complex transporters. When the transport through the membrane is massive, that is, in large quantities of material and with energy expenditure, then it is classified as endocytosis and exocytosis. Endocytosis is the incorporation of material into the cell. It can be structured into phagocytosis, the concept comparable with the drinking of the cell, since the cell incorporates cells in suspension, and the phagocytosis, process comparable to the eating of the cell, since it incorporates large quantities of material and even whole cells. Now we got the exocytosis, which is the secretion of the material produced by the cells, which can also be divided into regulated. In this case, the cell responds to a signal to release its products. For example, pancreatic enzymes are released into the intestine after hormonal signaling. And the constitutive. The secretion is constant. The components of saliva are a good example since the oral cavity is never completely dry. That means that the salivary glands function constitutively. Now we got the levels of organization. As known, the components that make up living beings and the living beings themselves constitute levels of organized complexity. The first level is that complexity is that of the atom, although if we are strict, we could even describe the subatomic level. The atoms form molecules and biomolecules. The biomolecules constitute the organelles and structures. The set of organelles form the functional unit of life, the cell. A set of cells specialized in specific function forms a tissue. The tissue form organs. The organs are grouped into systems, and in a multicellular organism, the systems constitute the individual.
Hello, my name is Abby, and I'm gonna talk about homeostasis and the main organ systems of the human body. Well, first, the homeostasis is the ability of an organism or a cell that allows it to maintain a certain internal condition so that it stays healthy and it functions correctly, regardless of the outside conditions or environment. Homeostasis is a process done by the endocrine and nervous system, and I'm going to talk about these and the other 9 organ systems of the human body. So first we have the circulatory system, and like the name says, it circulates blood around the body via the heart, veins, and arteries. It also equalizes the temperature of the body. Then the digestive system. Here we have some chemical processes that provide nutrients to the body via the mouth, esophagus, stomach, and intestines. The endocrine system are glands that produce hormones that regulate metabolism, reproduction, mood, sleep or growth, or etc. And then the lymphatic system or immune system basically defends the body against pathogens, or you know them as bacteria, viruses that could endanger the body. The muscular system works alongside the skeletal system, and it enables the body to move using muscles. The nervous system collects information from our senses and using the nerves, so that then the brain can send instructions to our body parts so we can cause physical actions. The reproductive system consists of the sex organs we require to procreate. Then in the respiratory system, the lungs and the trachea bring air or oxygen into and out of the body. And finally, the skeletal system consists of the bones supporting all our body and protecting organs.
Rising adolescent health problems such as road traffic injuries, mental disorders, and substance use disorders are an increasing cause for concern in countries that have otherwise reduced maternal mortality and boosted child survival, such as Mexico. Adolescents still have not developed their brain, and this can lead to poor life choices that can damage their health, such as drugs or unsafe sex. An unhealthy diet can also lead to health problems such as obesity, and it is not unheard of for teenagers to develop type 2 diabetes. Researchers from the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health conducted a massive study of the impact of health habits on life expectancy. Using data from the well-known Nurses' Health Study and the health professionals follow-up study. The researchers looked at NHS and HPFS data on diet, physical activity, body weight, smoking, and alcohol consumption that had been collected from regularly administered validated questionnaires. They found that these 5 healthy habits can help reduce the risk of a premature death as well as any disease. Number 1 is a healthy diet, which is calculated and rated based on the reported intake of healthy foods such as vegetables, fruits, nuts, whole grains, healthy fats, and omega-3 fatty acids, and unhealthy foods like red and processed meats, sugar-sweetened beverages, trans fat, and sodium. Number 2 is a healthy physical activity level, which is at least 30 minutes per day. Number 3 is a healthy body weight, which is between 18.5 and 24.9 BMI. Number 4 is smoking, and by smoking they mean the lack of smoking. Number 5 is a moderate alcohol intake, which was measured as between 5 and 15 grams per day for women and 5 to 30 grams for men.